Welcome to the seventh lesson. In this, we will be talking about adaptive planning. So, we'll start with some key concepts and terminologies with regards to planning in Agile, and then we'll see how Agile projects are initiated. In this, we will be talking about business case, Agile business case, and Agile project chartering. We'll see what is included in these two documents. Once we will discuss initiation, afterwards we will be talking about various levels of plannings in Agile. Predominantly, there are 5 levels of planning in Agile: portfolio level planning, product level planning, release level planning, iteration planning or sprint planning, daily planning. Once we are done with this, we will be talking about estimation in Agile, monitoring in Agile, and in the last section, we will be covering change management in Agile. Along with that, we will be talking about various tools and techniques such as affinity estimating, daily stand-ups, defining and testing acceptance criteria, estimating initial velocity, estimating capacity. We'll also be discussing iteration planning process, in which we use planning poker, story maps, story points, t-shirt sizing, time boxing, relative sizing. We will also be covering things about release planning process, and we'll discuss how backlog is refined, how requirements are collected. We will covering all these concepts in detail in this domain. Let's start. So in the first subsection, we are going to talk about some fundamental concepts about Agile planning. The very first thing is user story. We have already discussed the concept of a user story, but let's talk about it in more detail. A user story is an informal, general explanation of a software feature written from the perspective of the end user or customer. In traditional projects, we use the term requirement. In traditional projects, the term which is used to represent customer expectation, that is called customer requirement or customer needs. However, in Agile, it is called a user story. A product feature from the user's perspective. So a user story is the smallest unit of work in an Agile framework. A user story is an informal, general explanation of a software feature written from the perspective of the end user or customer. So now, what's the purpose of a user story? The purpose of a user story is to articulate how a piece of work will deliver a particular value back to the customer. So this is the basic building block of Agile planning. Agile planning revolves around user story. So we should note that customers don't have to be external and users in the traditional sense. They can also be internal customers or colleagues from whom we will be collecting requirements or user stories. User stories are a few sentences in simple language that outline the desired outcome. They don't go into detail. Requirements are added later once agreed upon by the team. So we will be talking about format of the user story. Format of a user story. How user stories are written. So traditionally, we used to write it down on a 3 by 5 inches index card like this. And there are 3 elements in a format of a user story. For example, as a user, I need this functionality so that I could achieve this business objective. So there are three elements of a completely described user story. First, user, who is requesting it. Second, functionality. Third, objectives. Which strategic objectives the user intends to achieve by incorporating this user story. So that's the format of a user story. On the backside of this card, acceptance criteria or test scenarios are written. We will be talking about acceptance criteria in the later part of our discussion when we will be talking about monitoring in Agile. Acceptance criteria or test scenarios. Right. So question is, what's the benefit of writing user stories? So there are various benefits. For example, as we call it as user story. So the focus is on the user. So a to-do list keeps the team focused on tasks that need to be checked off, but a collection of stories keeps the team focused on solving problems for real users. That's why it's called user story. So stories keep the focus on the user. So first is user focused or customer focused. So the focus is customer by writing it down. These stories enable collaboration. With the end goal defined, the team can work together to decide how best to serve the user and meet the goal. So they help in collaboration among stakeholders. What is being built, when it would be built, how things are being built and integrated. Next, story drive creative solutions. Creative solutions. Stories encourage the team to think critically and creatively about how to best solve for an end goal. And stories create momentum. With each passing story, the development team enjoys a small challenge and a small win, driving momentum. So these are some of the benefits of writing user stories. Right. So we will be talking more about user stories in detail, that what should be the characteristics of a good story. We'll be talking about a mnemonic invest, like it should be independent, it should be negotiable, it should be valuable, it should be estimable, it should be small, and it should be time bound or testable. Right. So we will be talking about all these features in detail in the coming slides. But here, the idea is to the fundamental or basic building block of agile planning is a user story. And user story is a product requirement from end user's perspective. So we take into consideration the perspective of the user, and accordingly, we write them down to make sure that the focus stays on customers. So they help in collaboration, they help in creative solutions, and they keep the momentum in the right direction. So this is the format. As a user, I want to perform this action so that I can accomplish this goal. So that's the format of the user story.